My colleague, Mr. Honorable Chip Roy, for 5 minutes.
Thank my friend from Florida. I know some of you are on a clock. Got to get out of here at 2 o'clock. I think we're going to come right up on that number. I'll just have a few questions really quickly. First of all, because we had some conversations earlier about the building from which Mr. Crooks was able to position himself. One of the things that's been talked about is the slope of the roof and all this nonsense. People, we've seen members, Clay Higgins, some of these guys been able to walk on that roof. One of the things that I was questioning about, nothing was deployed, given the extent that it was allowed to have the perimeter inside of that, and then allowed that guy to be able to get access to it, and all the stuff you're talking about with the rings, Dan. They didn't even deploy anything like putting barbed wire up or anti-climb spikes or anything else, right? There was literally nothing put up to deter someone from being able to get access to those buildings. Is that correct, Mr. Schaefer? You were on site?
Yes, Congressman, that is correct.
And, I mean, would that have been, again, given that it wasn't within the perimeter, would that have been another thing they could have done? Was done something to at least limit the ability to have access to the building? Put some sort of anti-climb spikes, barbed wire, anything up around it?
Yes, there were multiple possibilities on how to defeat that or possibly take that out of play as a threat area.
A question I'd ask Mr. Prince, you raised the defunding question. I don't think anybody questions where I personally come from on desire to defund a large chunk of government to the extent that I possibly can. But that being said, I think it was Mr. Gates who laid out the extent to which you're just basically a war criminal if you dare, raise those issues. But the real issue is, right, it's always the threat of shutdown, right? It's like, oh, things will shut down. And so this is my actual specific question. The psychology is always reversed. It says if you take the money away from the Secret Service in this case, or let's say we're talking about Border Patrol and dealing with the border. We had Mark Morgan here earlier. Anything we do to say, hold on, no, we're not going to give you this funding unless we get X. And then the other side says, well, you're taking away the funding from the thing you say you want. And i.e., we want a competent Secret Service. What is your response to that as someone who has been an effective and efficient manager of a large-scale organization dealing with security, to push back on that argument, which I think is a flawed argument? I have my own views on it, but I want to hear your thoughts.
What made America great, what made our society effective in the first place was competition, was innovation and efficiency from the private sector. Government did not make America great. And so that is a fundamental difference in paradigm that needs to be settled at the ballot box. And even Republicans have to return to being they have to return to be the party of fiscal sanity, because even Republicans have been runaway spenders, prolific, and it's like going downhill on one ski instead of on two skis. We've been going downhill.
Mr. Schaefer, and this is a question that I don't know exactly what you're going to say to it, but as someone who's on the ground and familiar with it, was there anything, we have that video, which I'm not going to pull up for sake of time, where you've got the sniper sitting up on the roof behind the president, right, and seemed to be looking across the direction to where Mr. Crooks was located. Was there at any point any rules of engagement or any orders coming down from on high that prohibited those individuals from reacting, to the best of your knowledge? Because I'm trying to figure out what was in their line of sight. And again, that's speculative from my standpoint because I'm not there.
Sure. So I can speak on both locations. So the north team, we'll call them, in the northern side of the buildings there, had a few obstructions visually to be able to engage them, to engage the shooter at that point in time. The southern team had a much better vantage point, and that speaks directly just to the location and proximity to where the shooter was located. However, going back to our earlier discussion about compromised authority, and Mr. Bongino can add to this as well, in that capacity, we don't need authorization. We don't need any other things other than the prerequisites for a threat to meet a deadly force response.
I appreciate that. Mr. Bongino, I'll let you comment on that, and I'll ask you one more question in closing, because I know you need to go. We had some reporting from Ms. Crabtree, who was here with the panel earlier and is here with us now, earlier about the potential engagement or interference, I should say, by Iranian authorities in terms of our ability to protect our president, Secret Service, and so forth. Do you have any perspectives on that and why that's particularly problematic, or anything to add about that, and how our foreign adversaries are viewing what we're seeing unfold in front of us?
Well, I want you to keep in mind that we've known about the Iranian threat after the death of Soleimani to John Bolton, Donald Trump, former President Trump, and others for well over 3 years now. There's no, keep in mind, this is a regime that has a history of documented terror attacks who sloganeers death to America. So they're not actually, their motives are, you don't have to investigate their motives, they tell you. They've known about it. If they have, and Susan's an excellent reporter, if you're not following her, you're making a big mistake on this. I have no reason to not believe her reporting or its accuracy. She's been that good.
3 sources, if I remember correctly.
If these 3 sources are accurate, that we have been compromised and security allocation decisions are being made by people under the influence of the Iranian terror regime, then this is going to be a whole different panel if we do this again. By the way, I have to run. I'm sorry. I got to excuse myself. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm done. I yield back.
Well, I want to thank our panelists, but we're going to do a quick